Wow, the SSPX has really been getting beat up recently. We're going to be talking about that on this episode of The Traditional Roman Catholic.
From a vehicle storage lot in an undisclosed location, here's another episode of The Traditional Roman Catholic.
The Society of St. Pius X, the SSPX, has been in the news a lot recently. They've been getting beat up. Speaking of getting beat up, you might notice this mug looks a little beat up. Not this mug, but this mug. Different issue, that's the CCP virus. But I'll tell you, they've been getting clobbered here. Started Easter Sunday when a famous Catholic internet personality, Dr. Taylor Marshall, attended an SSPX Mass with his family, received communion. He mentioned it on Twitter, and an immediate firefight erupted between traditionalists, trad people who used to be allies. You wouldn't expect that, but they were just going at it, and the basic issue revolved around the legitimacy of the SSPX, whether it was a legit organization or not. So that was number one. Number two, a week later, Church Militant, another Catholic online presence, very big, came out with a documentary detailing allegations against the SSPX that priests and lay people in positions of authority in the SSPX engaged in multiple acts of sexual predation against minors and young adults, and that the leadership in the SSPX was complicit, covered it up. We've heard that story before, obviously, in the church writ large, but those kind of that 1-2 punch, and people in the SSPX, the regular folks who attend Mass, they're upset, and you certainly can't blame them for that. They're understandably upset. The typical SSPX guy or gal, they attend the SSPX because they love the Latin Mass. They love the Mass in the traditional form, and they're tired of the Novi nonsense. All of the stuff that we've all seen in the way of abuses with the Novus Ordo Mass. They don't want that. They want to worship the way that we've worshipped all along prior to Vatican II. And they have a little bit of a circle the wagons mentality, and you can't blame them. Number one, there's the assaults by the outside world, and we all experience that as Roman Catholics and traditionalists in particular. And then there's the hostility from their own church, from the Roman Catholic Church. So both of those things together, and you would expect a vigorous defense from people who support the SSPX. And the defense has been vigorous. It's been enthusiastic to the point of being strident, and occasionally crossing over the border into vicious. So there's lots of shooting the messenger type stuff going on in the Twitter sphere. And not only shooting the messenger, disemboweling the messenger, stomping on the exposed entrails of the messenger, metaphorically speaking, of course. And yeah, it's gotten pretty ugly. Now, for its part, Church Militant, they played kind of rough as well. They were strident in their reporting, a little bit of sensationalism, a lot of people think, a little bit of snarkiness, a lot of people think. And looking back on it, that was not a real good plan. The gravity of the allegations, if proved true, were sufficient in and of themselves to command all the attention that they could possibly want, and enough controversy would get sparked just with the allegations being laid out there in a non-controversial manner. So a couple of things going on here. But there are two main stories that are going on, and they've kind of gotten mixed together in sort of a horizontal scissors thing, but it revolves around two separate questions. Question number one, is the SSPX a legit organization? Are they in schism? Can Roman Catholics attend an SSPX Mass? Is that okay to do so? So that's question number one. Question number two goes back to these allegations of sexual misconduct. Are those allegations real? So two separate questions, but they're getting kind of mixed together in the churn, and that creates a little bit more confusion. So here's my take on it, and I know who cares what my take is. I'm a guy with a couple dozen followers. Yeah, maybe 3.5 dozen followers, but not much. So I'm no theologian. I'm no expert in canon law or howitzer law. And I'm just a trotty layman, traditional guy, loves the extraordinary form, and I've never been to an SSPX Mass. Okay, I love the Latin Mass for all the reasons that you probably love the Latin Mass if you're a trad. The reverence, the emphasis on the holy sacrifice, you know the drill. And if you're not familiar with the Latin Mass, there's a lot of shows, a lot of things out there that can acquaint you with it, so we won't do that here. But here's a question for you. Would we have the Latin Mass in any form at any venue if it weren't for the SSPX? If Archbishop Lefebvre hadn't done what he did famously or infamously back in the day, would any of us be able to worship in the extraordinary form, whether we're FSSP, Institute of Christ the King, Sovereign Priest, SSPX, of course, or any of the several diocesan masses that are being offered just by regular parish priests? Would any of us have access to the Latin Mass if Archbishop Lefebvre hadn't done what he did? And he took a risk. And I, for one, am going to ever be grateful to him for doing that. And I'm grateful for the SSPX for the stance that they took and the flack that they took. Because in a very real way, we've all benefited. So, you know, first of all, I want to wish all my brothers and sisters in the SSPX all the best. Because again, I know this has been a really tough couple of weeks for you, and it's not going to get any easier. I have no idea what to think about the SSPX's canonical status. I don't understand it. The debate rages back and forth, and I have trouble sorting it all out. And it's confusing. And it's like so much that's happened in the church after the Second Vatican Council. And this is just another thing that it confuses the hell out of me. Okay, it just does. But what about the allegations of sexual misconduct? Like we said, that's a separate kind of issue here. So let's think about this for a minute, though. Sexual sins is like the number one go-to tool in the bag of our enemy, the devil. It is a very, very effective tactic, and he's used it with great success over the millennia. More recently, we've seen how effective it's been in bringing the Roman Catholic Church to her knees with this never-ending, widespread, and terrifyingly deep scandal that's been visited upon us as a result of the clerical sexual abuse, both homosexual and heterosexual, of children and young adults, and its subsequent cover-up by the clergy and the leadership. The rot runs very deep. We all know that, and I'm not telling you anything new. Now, given the effectiveness of that tactic and how much damage it's done to the church as a whole, doesn't it make sense that the enemy would apply the same tactic in attacks against the traditional outfits. And not just SSPX, but FSSP, Institute of Christ the King, Sovereign Priest, the whole panoply. Why would he spare any of us? Now, admittedly, you would think that maybe we'd be able to resist that a little bit more because our understanding of theology and of the nature of sin hasn't been watered down the way it has, unfortunately, for a lot of the people in the Novi Church who have just had hideously bad catechesis over the intervening decades since Vatican II. But the attacks are going to continue, and every once in a while, the enemy is going to be able to successfully breach the defenses and raise hell. So, I'm sure it's happened across the board. The thing that is really frightening is if it happened to the extent that these allegations from Church Militant would tend to indicate, and if the damage was that bad. I mean, this is approaching like the Legionaries of Christ level of damage, if it's true. So it makes sense that this kind of thing could happen. Now, for people on both sides of the battle here over SSPX and these allegations, I'd offer this. First of all, let's tone down the ad hominem attacks and look at it like this. There is, in the military we'd call it ground truth. There's an objective truth. And a battlefield commander doesn't know the entire situation on the ground because his information is always a little late and it's always imperfect. The troops in the front line have a far less good idea of what the heck's going on in the battle. It's very confusing there. Nobody on the battlefield has the ground truth. And with a scandal like this, I would say none of us really understand exactly what the ground truth is. That doesn't mean that there isn't an objective truth. God knows there is. The rest of us are going to have an imperfect perception of that truth. So there's an objective truth. And either this alleged misconduct happened or it didn't. Either it happened to a greater or a lesser extent, or it didn't. The truth is the truth, and we have to attempt to discover it. These allegations, are they part of a deliberate plan to intentionally destabilize and discredit the SSPX? Is that what they're really geared to do? Are these allegations meant to wrongly smear the SSPX and destroy their legitimacy? Well, either that's the intent behind the allegations or it isn't. Okay? There is a ground truth to all of this. And I don't know what it is. Maybe you do, but I don't. When it comes to the messenger, okay, in this case I guess it's Church Militant, but do we shoot the messenger? If the allegations are false, they are false no matter how much we support the messenger, no matter how much we like the messenger, no matter what good the messenger has done in the past. If the allegations are false, our opinion of the messenger doesn't change that one way or the other. Conversely, if the allegations are true, no matter how much we hate the messenger, no matter how much we dislike the messenger, no matter what the messenger's past agenda might have been, it doesn't change the truth. So the messenger is an important part of this whole thing, but it's not a critical part. Now, does that mean that we shouldn't take a look at the motivations of the messenger, what might be behind that? Well, I think that's legit. I mean, when you think of the recent congressional hearings for the Supreme Court nominees or a cabinet nominee, and somebody shows up trotting out a witness with some allegations that sound pretty difficult, and you kind of know what their motive is behind that, that doesn't change the fact you've got to get down to the ground truth. are the allegations true or are they not? And so the same issue would apply here, I would say. So these allegations are going to be substantiated or they're not. And you may not like the messenger, or you may think the messenger is just the greatest thing going, but the truth is the truth. I don't know what it is, and I certainly hope and pray that we find out and find out quickly before there's any more unnecessary damage done, because during this whole thing, you know, the devil's laughing at us. So for my brothers and sisters in the SSPX, like I said before, you were going through a really difficult time. You didn't ask for any of this. You just wanted to worship God the way that Catholics have worshiped God for century upon century. That's what you wanted. You weren't trying to cause all this, and you didn't cause this. And you're confused right now. I'm confused. And I'm going to be praying for you. In fact, we all should be praying for our friends in the SSPX, and we should be praying for each other, whether we're Novus Ordo Catholics, whether we're traditionalists of any type. We need to support each other in prayer during this. So that's my take on the whole deal. I'd be glad to respond to any comments that I might get on this video. Usually I don't get many, but you never know. But anyway, there's the deal. There's my opinion, such that it is.